trio is on the run. Soul searches for the power to stop Marcus, and love is in the air. Hello, entertainment enthusiasts. This is Ray, and this is the Fandom Realm. Today I'm going to be reviewing episode 4 and 5 of The Bastard Son and the Devil Himself. As always, this is a spoiler review, so just keep that in mind. Episode 4 begins by giving us some context for Gabriel. We see him living in Paris, and he ends up leaving another man in a bar, but he's going to be given a job by Mercury. Mercury was being channeled by a younger woman, much like Nathan's grandmother was doing in episode number 1, and she tells him that she wants him to meet someone. Now back to the present. Gabriel is annoyed at their present secretive circumstances. They're going to pick up some supplies, some of that's going to be vodka, and they board a boat piloted by a man named Habir in order to cross the channel to France. But they actually are going to use a portal called a cut to jump from the boat directly to Paris. When Gabriel and the group returns to his apartment, he finds his equipment has been robbed, and without it, he won't be able to get them to Mercury. This takes us through bars and artifact dealerships while the trio looks for the thief. It seems the thief, Ruby, has sold the gear, so Gabriel proposes to the middleman that he return it in exchange for Annalise. Annalise can be ransomed back to the Fairborns. They actually speak in French, so that Annalise and Nathan don't know what they're saying, but when all of Gabriel's gear is returned, it's still missing the crucial item, a small book. So he tries to call off the deal, but the seller is going to blurt out about the deal, and Annalise and Nathan flee as police come up to them. Gabriel manages to knock out the seller and an officer with a yellow powder, but he's taken out by another officer. While in custody, Gabriel is pushed to reveal Nathan's location. He, of course, still does not know the importance of Nathan. He keeps quiet for now. Nathan and Annalise head back to the bar where Gabriel was asking for information about Ruby earlier, and they look for some of his friends for help. In the meantime, Soul, Jessica, and Bjorn torture Habir, the boatman, for information on where the group have gone. Jessica's going to do most of the torturing. She shifts into Habir, and as she cuts Habir, the cuts appear on her as well. Bjorn, Celia, and Kieran are disturbed by the pleasure she's taking in torturing someone. With the help of Nikki and Hugo, Nathan and Annalise are able to break Gabriel out of custody, but he still needs his stolen items, particularly the book. We actually are going to find out that it was Clark, the man that he left at the bar at the start of the episode, who stole it. And as it turns out, the book is just a keepsake and has no magical qualities. The portals, called cuts, in reality, that they have been using to travel back and forth have always been there. The one that leads to Mercury is in the bar that they were in earlier. Once he retrieves his book, Gabriel uses his powder to erase Clark's memory. After running around all day and being frustrated, Annalise is accidentally going to out Nathan as the son of Marcus Edge, which is going to make Gabriel very uneasy for quite some time. He actually is going to leave Annalise and Gabriel with Nikki and Hugo, who take them back to the bar. But unknown to everyone, it's all been a setup. The French witches in the bar don't like the Fairborns, and they see Marcus Edge as potentially their leader. So they don't want Nathan to have anything to do with killing him, and so they are wanting to take Nathan out. Hugo's power is actually being able to mute a space, sort of like creating a bubble and then muting what's inside of it. And he's going to do that while they hold Nathan and Annalise. Gabriel is going to return to rescue everyone, and he's going to use a pink, sort of like alchemical bomb that penetrates the muted area, and it's going to knock out all the witches. Nathan's going to end up beating down Hugo, much like he did Neil, that was Annalise's brother, earlier in the season. And while he's doing this, we get to hear the heartbeats throbbing in his ears. Gabriel and the kids are able to escape the bar, but they don't make it through the cut, which means they're going to have to take a much more long way around and a much more dangerous way around to get to Mercury's. As the episode ends, Nathan sees the ink from Soul's spell beginning to snake and spread through his veins. Now, moving on to episode 5. After escaping from the bar in the middle of Paris, Nathan, Annalise, and Gabriel are on the move. The problem is their route to Mercury takes them through the Ozani territory, a Blood Witch-controlled area that still shows signs of a brutal Fairborn raid, something Annalise has a hard time with accepting since she is Fairborn, and with her dad's involvement on the Fairborn Council. Nathan's going to hear heartbeats in the woods, and the group run into the Blood Witches. The Blood Witches of the forest don't like people who venture into their territory without asking, even if it is because of Mercury. Now, we were introduced to this earlier in the season. Gabriel does mention that you can't go through other witches' territories without letting them know what's going on. They are going to come around when Nathan reveals that he is the son of Marcus Edge. They offer to guide Gabriel and his kids down the river, but on one condition, and that is that they stick around for the giving ceremonies of the twins, Max and Odette. It's revealed that twins develop much earlier, and only one of them needs to drink the blood at the ceremony because of the closeness of their connection. Now, something interesting here is that the Bloods are basically introduced to us as almost like a collective of farmers living a simple life on something much like a homestead, and they don't seem to be very threatening. That's basically how we're introduced to them. At dinner, we finally get some background on the Bloods and some perspective as well. We learn that they preserve their gifts through the generations by drinking the blood and eating hearts of other witches. It's a way to preserve the dead witches' powers, which otherwise would disappear and be lost when they die. We are also introduced to the village elder, who has taken many powers to save them. We do find out that Marcus apparently eats hearts to take what he is owed. Marcus's mother was a heart eater, and the Fairborn witches killed her and all the others like her, denying him of the legacy that would have been passed on to him. Since then, the Fairborns have painted the Bloods as monsters. So we're starting to see that there are two sides to every story. The next part, we're going to see some of the development between the relationship of the trio. Gabriel and Nathan are going to begin to show a connection, sort of like a bromance, but with magical issues. We are going to find out that Nathan is a virgin and Annalise isn't, and they're going to begin to hook up, but Annalise is going to lose control and decimates the henhouse containing the poultry they were supposed to gather for the giving ceremony. The story is once again going to turn dark as the Fairborns are still searching the lands for Nathan and Annalise. Odette and Max's father, Zell, returns home from hunting with a Fairborn captive. The Bloods execute the captain using a magical trellis that crushes the man to death, and it blooms red and orange flowers when fed his blood. The village elder pulls out his heart and eats it, thus preserving his power. Later that night, Nathan is suffering illness from the witch's bottle. Of course, that is the spell that Saul cast on him by giving him those tattoos. We're going to learn that it is a parasite spell designed to steal a witch's power. And in order to work, it requires 2 samples of blood from the line of both the caster and the recipient, which explains why Saul had to kill his brother and Nathan's grandmother. At this moment, Celia arrives into the farmhouse or barn, it looked more like a barn, to negotiate for the kids, warning the Bloods that the house was surrounded by Fairborn Hunters. The Bloods basically kick out Celia. Only problem is they don't realize that a Fairborn is already among them, because Zell's youngest daughter had been outside, and when she returned in, it is actually Jessica who has taken her form. Zell is going to give a great speech about fighting for what they believed in before eventually being stabbed to death by Jessica. An errant gunshot is going to go off, and that's going to bring a hell of gunfire down on the barn from outside. Jessica, still masquerading as the little girl, crawls across the floor to Nathan and cuts off one of his fingers. Odette leads Gabriel, Nathan, and Annalise through a trap door leading to their escape boat. Celia is going to approach, but she's not going to try to catch them. She actually ends up helping Nathan board the boat. She threw him over her shoulder and helped him get on the boat, which was very interesting, as she's sort of been portrayed sort of as this Amazonian type figure all along. Problem is, of course, Odette's not going to trust her, so Odette knocks her out with one of the paddles to the boat. As the episode ends, we basically get to see Jessica handing Nathan's finger to Soul, and she whispers that we are so close now. This is while Soul is surveying the massacre inside the barn. Now I just want to give you some thoughts and reactions to what happened in this episode. I am going to say most of these ideas I'm going to put out there, most of these thoughts and reactions are actually more from episode 5 than episode 4. While I thought episode 4 was important, it gave us some information about Gabriel. It gave us some world building in things like magic, showing things like the mute spell that was used, sort of showing us some of the human world that they lived in. Most of what jumps out to me in the episode is the 2 episodes together or just in episode 5. So looking at that, the first thing I'm going to point out is that we finally do get some additional information about the Bloods, and we get some of their history. The things like eating hearts, drinking blood to preserve the powers of those that came before, and then those can be passed on. Also, I thought it was important that we get to see how important Marcus Edge is to them, and that we get to see his story, or at least an explanation of his story, and why he and the Fairborns don't get along. I think that's something that we've been missing that actually would have been nice for us to see earlier in the series. Now, sort of expanding on that idea is that we're now starting to get to see this almost a role reversal between the Fairborns and the Bloods. What we are introduced to in the series is that basically the Fairborns are the good guys, the Bloods are the bad guys, and that the Bloods are just these monsters and they do horrible things to people. But as the story has started to evolve, we're seeing the Bloods live basically as these innocent farmers, and the Fairborns are the ones out there hunting them and persecuting them and destroying their lands, and that is why they're basically defending themselves. When Fairborns come around, they capture them and they kill them in this trellis thing and take their powers. And so with that, I think we're going to see even more of that as we go on, this sort of role reversal of the Fairborns becoming evil. Now, this is something we're going to see throughout the rest of the series, is this idea of the Fairborns not exactly being very nice. Another thing I'm just going to throw in there is it has amazed me how evil they have really made Jessica up to this point. All she was characterized as early on was being very mad and upset that they had been judged, the family had been judged all their life because Nathan was the son of Marcus Edge. And she was never shown to be a nice little girl. And she always had this negative view of Nathan and always picked on him. But that was something that I thought, honestly, was something that was just pointed towards Nathan. And it still may be. But she is just turned into this evil witch that is, you just don't want to root for. You want to see somebody give her comeuppance. And so I think she makes an excellent bad guy in this series. And that's important in a series like this. We're starting to see bad guys develop, and they are very bad guys. And that's always good. Now, the last couple things I'm going to mention, and they do sort of go together, and that is to do with Gabriel. I think Gabriel and his inclusion has really added a spark to the story. I think it was a little bit bland early on, but they added this sort of, I don't want to say careless, but he's sort of a free-willing magical user, and he's out there and he's just sort of living his own life, but he's free-spirited. He is very charismatic, and I think that was something that was missing early on. And with that, I think it's very important for the relationship too with Annalise and Nathan, because really I never felt the chemistry between Annalise and Nathan. And their hookup scene, it sort of seemed to be out of nowhere. I know Nathan actually was kissing her earlier in the other episode, but when all it happened, it sort of seemed to be out of character a little bit. And so with that, adding Gabriel in there sort of throws another dimension into this. And not to mention, this is sort of the first time in the entire series so far, and we're 5 episodes in, that we see any possibility that they're looking at some type of relationship with Nathan and Gabriel. Now, I really want to comment on this because in my first reaction, I had some people make some comments to me basically saying that I was wrong about something I said in one of my intros. In the first intro to episode 1, I warned people that this show was being heavily marketed by some people as basically a LGBTQ series. And my warning to people was that if you're expecting one of these romance type deals where from the very first episode you are seeing that yes, there's Gabriel and Nathan loving each other, or that's going to be the relationship, that's not the type of story you're getting. There actually is zero evidence that there's going to be any type of gay relationship in this story until episode 5. And that is something that I completely stand by. And, I don't know why people had an issue with that. I'm not saying there shouldn't be one. I'm not upset that there is one. I'm just saying this is actually the first time you see that possibility and any even hint of it. Now that I've said all that I want to say about these 2 episodes, thanks for watching the review. Please do me a favor and subscribe to the channel, like the videos, and of course, make comments below so we can all discuss what's going on. And I'll see you next time on the Fandom Realm.